Section 3.1. Let's look at these things first. Mean in statistics is just another way of saying average. Median is the piece of data or the number, you can call it data or number, in the middle. It's the piece of data or the number in the middle. Mode is the number that occurs the most often. Mid-range, we'll actually see the formula. It's another way of manipulating data. We usually find the range and divide it by 2. I'm going to hold off on that because the formula is below. And the weighted mean is an average. Once again, same up here, mean is average. But the weighted mean, it's an average with different percent weights. In other words, some things are worth more than others, like our class. The Canvas quizzes is 5% of our grade. However, the major tests we're going to take next week is, I think it's 55% of our grade. Do you see they have, we're still trying to find your average, your grade in the class. That's an average, but your quizzes count less than your tests. A weighted average is when certain topics count more or less than other things. That's what a weighted mean is. It's still your average, your class average, but certain things are worth more. Homework might not be worth as much as a test. And once again, there's statistics, characteristics, or measured, obtained by using data values of a sample. Parameter, I mean, you can take a look at these. These are all definitions. I don't need to read them. Well, the main thing about this, I am going to stress that when you talk about statistic, it's a sample. And when you talk about a parameter, it's a population. Remember, a sample is part of the population. Population is everything we're talking about. A sample is a small part of the population. So a statistic is part of the sample. A parameter is part of the population. So you do need to know the difference, that you do need, not the difference, but you need to know statistic is part of a sample and parameter is part of a population. Okay, so we do need to mark those down. Rounding, general rounding rule. You always take it to, let's see what it says here. It's supposed to be the, yeah, don't round. It says general rounding rule. Don't round until your final answer. You should be done until the final answer. Rounding should be done. So don't round in between. If you have a whole bunch of numbers, don't like take a couple of numbers and then round it and then add other numbers to it and round it and then find an answer and then round it. Do all the math and then round it one time at the end. So that's what a rounding rule is. Don't round it until you get to the answer. Once again, mean is the average. Another formula for average is adding up all the data. Adding up all the data and dividing it by the number of pieces of data. The number of data points. This is the symbol, and we need to know the difference here. This is the symbol for sample average, sample mean. We say mean, but average is the same thing. X bar is sample average. The Greek letter mu is population average, population mean, okay? So make sure we know the difference. These are both averages. This is for a sample average, and this is for the population average. So we need to know the difference there in those two symbols. Sometimes I use this wrong symbol, but they are both averages. You just need to know mu. If you see this symbol, mu, it stands for population average. And X bar, we say X bar, X with a line on top of it, with a bar on top of it, is the sample average. We're going to get to the... you always take, so the actual rounding rule is take it to one more decimal place than the data. If we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to find the average, I add them up, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and I get 10. And you divide by the number of pieces of data, 1, 2, 3, 4. 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. Do you see the answer? The answer, the mean should be rounded to one more decimal place than the data, if we have to. Do you see the data has no decimal places? However, the answer, since the data has no decimal place, the answer can have one decimal place. You can't have two decimal places. You can only have one more decimal place than the data. If our data was this, if I can find where my pen is, hang on, there it is. If my data was 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and I wanted to find the average, let's say my average was 1.257. Let's just say the average was that. If my data is one decimal place, then my answer has to be 2. So 7, this adds 1, and I get 1.26. I mean, do you see, if the data is one decimal place, the answer can be 2 decimal places. The answer is 1 decimal place more than the data. 1 more decimal place than the data. The answer can be 1 decimal place more than data. It doesn't have to be. If it was rounded to a whole number or something, that's fine. But the answer should be taken to 1 more decimal place than the data if possible, if need be. By the way, this is going to be on the test. This rounding thing, it's in the homework, and it's going to be on the test. Promise you. Okay. Can somebody tell me another word for this mean? What's another word for that?
Average.
Average. I just want to make sure everybody understands the statistic means average. So we're going to put this in our calculator. If we count how many pieces of data we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're going to add all 9 pieces of data. Just add them all up. Let's do that on our calculator. I'm going to go 475 plus 447 plus 440 plus 761 plus 993. Why couldn't they just did 3 or 4 numbers? Plus 1052 plus 783 plus 671 plus 621. I add it all up, I get 6243. There are 9 pieces of data, so on my calculator, I divide it by 9. 6243 divided by 9, and I get 693.666667 on my calculator. Did anybody get the same thing I did? Just checking, see if anybody else.
Yes, I did.
Okay, thanks, because then you're wrong also.
We have to round it, right?
Yes, you always, since there's no decimal place in the answers, we can take it to 1 decimal place. So you look to the right of that decimal place you're going to round it to. 5 or more, you can add 1 to the decimal place. And my answer is actually 693.7. The answer has to be 1 decimal place more than the data. So that would be the answer. And by the way, on the test, it's going to look like this. 693.67, B 694, C 693.6, D 693.7. And they're going to say, which is the correct answer? And they all look correct. But this is 1 decimal place correctly rounded than the data. Do you see? That's 2 decimal places, and that's wrong. That's only no decimal places. That's wrong. This is not rounded correctly since you have to look to the next number and see if you're going to add 1 or not. So that's wrong. So on the test, there's a possibility of trying to trick you by putting the same answer several times, and you have to know how to round it correctly. Okay, so now I want to do this on my calculator. Now that we did it manually, let's do it on our calculator. And what I'm going to do is put all this data into L1. So on your calculator, go to stat number 1, edit. Make sure you clear list 1 and list 2 if you have anything in there. And I'm putting all that in my data list. 475, enter. 447, enter. 440, 761, 993, 1052, 783, 671, 621. So I'm going to enter all this into my calculator into list 1. And we are going to go to, I'm going to go there in a second. I just want to make sure everybody sees this, and I'm going to go to my calculator and show you. Okay, so hopefully you've entered all this data into list 1. Trying to get, there it is. So I've entered in, once again, I went to stat button, number 1, edit, and I typed in all the data into list 1. So what we're going to do is I'm going to write this down. To find the average, we go to stat, arrow over to calculate, number 1 var stats, hit enter. And do you see how I have some list says list 1? That's where I want my data to be. My frequency list, hopefully yours says is blank. If it's not blank, like mine is not blank, I'm actually going to clear it or hit delete there. So there should not be nothing in frequency list. And then I'm going to hit calculate. So I'm going to do this again and show you. But if we look, remember X bar was the average for a sample, 693.6666666. N means there's 9 pieces of data, just like we had. So that first one is the average. So Let's write this down, how to do that. And by the way, I have a video on how to find the average using your calculator. So it's already in week 5 module. So how to find the mean or average, once again, mean or average. I'm going to just start saying mean here after a while. Enter data into L1, then hit stat, arrow over to calculate, go down to number 1, var stats. Stat, calculate 1 var stats. Then it should say list. You should be an L1. Should say frequency list. Should be blank. And then calculate. Go here and hit enter. So this is how you do it to find the average. Enter your data into list 1. Then you calculate 1 var stats. List should be L1. Frequency list should be blank. That's what that says, even though it's hard to read. It should be blank. And then we're going to enter when we go to calculate, and we're going to look at the X bar. That's our average, other known as mean. All right. So let's do that on our calculator again. Once again, stat number 1, we entered the data here. Then once we enter the data, we go to stat, arrow over to calculate, and you scroll down, but we don't have to scroll down. It's number 1 var stats. I hit enter. List should say L1 because that's where my data's at. Frequency list should be blank. I go to calculate, hit enter. And I have my average. I just have to know my data's no decimal places, so I can put my answer in 1 decimal place. 693.7. Okay. So we'll probably do that a couple more times today. Here's one. Let's find the average of this. So we're going to do the same thing. 110, 76, 29, 38, 105, 1 and 31. Add all that into L1. I'm going to clear my list. 110, 76, 29. And you guys write down your answer. I want to see what you get for an answer. 29, 38. If you want to type it into the chat box, type in your answer to the chat box.
When I get to var stats, I can't find calculate on, it's not showing me calculate.
Oh, just hit enter then. You should. Let me. So I'm going to go there in a second and verify that we get the same thing as you get. Hang on. I just want to make sure everybody types this in. All right, so everybody should have this data. Okay, so we're editing our data. We put everything in the list 1. Then we go to stat. You don't see the calculate here? Do you see? I hit stat
Well,
and then arrow over to calculate.
I got that.
Okay. And then you 1 var stats, you hit enter.
Yes. It says 1 var stats list 1, frequency list is blank.
Okay. Just hit enter, enter, enter. Hit enter 3 times.
Okay. It says med equals 57, quartile 3 equals 105, and max x equals 110.
Are you using the app?
Yes.
Anybody else? Did anybody get this? Did anybody try it and get this that I have?
I got that.
Okay.
I'm getting it.
Oh, okay, then I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out why your calculator is saying something different.
I'll go clear it and try it again.
Yeah, clear it and try it again. Oh, you know what? While we're here, if we're not using stat plot, turn that off. Just in case, if you know the stat plot, it was on, and I arrowed over and turned it off just to make sure it's not there. So that should be off, but that, and you shouldn't have anything in list 2. There shouldn't be anything in list 2. I have something else in there that shouldn't be there either. Here. Okay. Now on the app, does anybody see the word calculate, I mean, when we get to this point? I mean, when we get to, yeah, that point.
I don't. I just click enter
Uh-huh.
and then it
Okay.
takes me to that.
Okay. You get the same, you got 64.833?
0.8. Yes.
Okay, good, good. Hopefully you got it now. Did you get it?
No.
You're using the TI-84 Plus app?
Yes.
Where is it on? What are you, oh, can we see it? Can I have you share your screen and we see it? Is this Sophia?
No, it's Whitney.
Oh, Whitney. Hi, Whitney. Okay. I'm making you as a co-host. If you want to share your screen,
I don't.
and then show us.
I'll continue to try it.
Okay. If not, we'll see me after class then. I'll hang around after class and we'll see if we get it. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go back. So everybody should have got whatever I got. I don't know what I got anymore now. Calculate one of our stats. 64.8. We ended up with 64.83. One decimal place, since the data didn't have any. 4 or less, you don't change anything. So the answer is 64.8. That's the average or the mean. Okay. Oh, let's get to the next one. I really hate that this computer jumps so much. All right. So finding the mean, the average with group data now. So this is when you were going to have more than one list, group data. Here's the steps. Make a table as shown, class, frequency, midpoint. And then it's going to show you all the work, but we're going to have the calculator do all the work for us. Find the midpoint. So we're going to actually find the midpoints for each item. Multiply the frequency by the midpoint. We're not going to do that. Find the sum, and then blah, blah, blah. It's going to tell us, but the calculator is going to do this work for us. So this is pretty much typical what you would see on a test, okay? You would see this on a test. And this is group data. That means that it's got boundaries, and then it's got a frequency. So it's just not a group of numbers. It's boundaries and a frequency. And we want to find, if you have this, you need two things. You need midpoints and you need frequency, okay? Frequency is always going to be in L2, so the midpoint's going to be in L1, okay? Frequency always goes into list 2. So if we don't see this right now. Let's pretend we don't see this. So we have to find the midpoint of each of these groups. We have to find the midpoint. To find the midpoint of class boundaries, if you remember, we already wrote that formula down. To find the midpoint was the upper class plus the lower class limit, boundary or limits. The upper boundary plus the lower boundary divided by 2, 5.5 or 10.5. 5.5 plus 10.5 divided by 2. And that's 16 divided by 2 is 8. So the first midpoint is 8. And then if I do the same thing, add these two together, I get 26. Then divide it by 2, I get 13. So we're finding the midpoint of all of these. Add these together, I get 36. Divided by 2, I get 18. So once you find all the midpoints, let's put all this into list 1, and let's put all this into list 2. So I'm going to try to be a little neater. So we're putting frequency always goes into list 2. So don't get that mixed up. Frequency always goes into list 2. So stat number 1, edit, we're going to put clear out list 1, and we're going to put the midpoints, 8 and 13, all this into list 1. 18, 23, 28, 33, and 38. And list 2 is all the frequencies. 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2. So this is similar to a weighted mean. By the way, then they go through the whole process. I don't want you to do it this long way because we teach us to use the calculator. So, wait, did they not find the answer to that? Oh, I guess they didn't find the answer. So we're going to find the answer and write it down. All righty, so let's go to our calculator. Once again, in list 1, we put all the midpoints. List 2, we put the frequencies. Okay, so we're going to write this down. Stat, arrow over to calculate. 1 var stats. We're still in 1 var stats. Our list is in list 1. Frequency, that's why he said frequency is list 2. We have to put list 2 on there. Remember, if you look right above number 2, there's an L2 right above the number 2. So to get L2 into that spot, you have to hit second number 2, and L2 pops into that spot. List 1 is your midpoints. Frequency list is list 2. And when we hit enter, my average is 24.5. My average is 24.5. So we're going to write that down. I'm going to go up here and share it on the whiteboard. So this is actually a weighted mean, or a mean for, how did we say it? Let me look real here. We called it a mean for frequency distribution, or they called it something else. Group data, mean for group data. When you have group data, there we go. Where? How come I can't get back there? There. Mean for group data. Okay, list one, we're going to put our midpoints. List two, we're going to put the frequencies. Enter. List two, all the midpoints. Enter list one, all the midpoints. List two, all the frequencies. Then we're going to go to stat, calculate number one, var stats. It's going to say list. We're putting in L1, and it's going to say frequency list. Frequency list always goes, put L2 in there. Remember, we put L2 in there by hitting the second number 2, which is the L2 button, and then calculate. And we get 24.5 for this problem. Did anybody else get 24.5? I hope somebody else got 24.5. Anybody?
I got it. It's just on my actual calculator, the TI-83. It was doing everything correct until I had to add the L2.
Yes.
I didn't know how to do it, so I just opened up the actual app on my computer and I got the 24.5.
Yeah, the TI-83 will do it, but you have to type in L1, comma L2. There's a whole, I mean, you can go through the information booklet or the steps and procedures for the TI-83. You have to hit L1, comma L2, and there, I mean, it's a little bit more tedious to do those problems. That's why I don't recommend the TI-83. It's so much easier using this one. But yeah, you can still do it with the TI-83 if you have the user's manual, or you can look online and it shows you how to do it also. But if you do that, then if you use the TI-83 for everything, all the steps for everything we do is going to be different, because it doesn't have you have to type in L1, L2 instead of having the frequency list. It doesn't have all that stuff in there. Stat, calculate, number one. See, it doesn't show all this. Now you have to type in parentheses L1, comma L2, comma, and then you have to type in something else and hit enter, and then it gives you the answer. So yeah, not a big fan of that TI-83 because we're using this. Good. All right, so oh, I didn't really want to clear that. That was that. Let's move on. To the workbook. Workbook. There we go. All right, so this is a typical test question then. It's going to say, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about all the words. It doesn't mean much. It says find the mean. Oh, why isn't my pen working right now? Hang on. Fine. Oh, this is maybe in the way. Give me a second. There we go. So it's still not working. There it is. Find the mean. This is group data. It's not just numbers and then find the average. It's group data. So remember frequency list. This goes into L2. Frequency always goes into L2. We need to find the midpoints for group data. And we need to put them in L1. So once again, to find the midpoints, you add these two up and divide by 2. So even though that just shows the range, let's add them up and divide by 2. 15.5 plus 18.5 divided by 2. And the midpoint is 17. And then the next one, 18.5. 22, and somebody said 20. I bet I know what the next one is. If you notice, after a while, they keep on going, increasing by 3. The next one's going to be 23, and the next one should be 26. 26, sorry. And you can check that out. This gives you 46 divided by 2. You get 23. This gives you 52 divided by 2 is 26. So there's the data for L1 on the right. I'm sorry, my pen is just real. There it is. There's the data for L1, and here's the data for L2. So let's put these in the correct boxes. Number 1, edit and clear list 1 and 2. List 1 is 17, 20, 23, and 26. And list 2 is 14, 12, 18, and 10. So make sure you put the midpoints in list 1 and the frequency in L2. And when I put that in my calculator, I go to stat, arrow over to calculate, 1 var stats. I have L1. I don't have anything in L2, so I'm going to put it in L2. I'm going to put an L2 in there. I'm sorry. I did that. Second, number 2 with the L2 in there. And then when I hit enter, my average is 21.3. My mean is 21.3. So that's our mean right there. Any questions on this? Don't forget, this is where the midpoints were. L1, L2. And you should get 20. Did anybody else get 21.3?
I did, sir.
Okay, good. I really recommend practicing this. We are going to be using so much calculator stuff for this test. I mean, the whole test is going to be calculator, pretty much everything on it. So you got to be very proficient in this. All right. Let's see what else we got. See, this is just one section, 3.1. We still have to go through 3.2 and 3.3, and then next week, 3.4. Okay, so next, median. Median is the number in the middle. The number in the middle. Arrange data in ascending order if you want, from lowest to highest. Determine the number of values in the data set. So this is plenty. In fact, I would put a star by these steps. I really would, because you're going to probably need this. I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain it, but these are really good steps. If n is odd, select the middle piece of data. If n is even, find the two middle pieces and take the average of them, is what it says. So, I mean, that's what it says. Arrange them in order. Determine the number of values, and then we're going to call that n. If n is odd, then it's the middle piece of data. If n is even, then it's the two middle values. You're going to take the average of two middle pieces. So just to show you, let's take a look at this data. Let's count it says put the data in order. So the smallest piece of data, oh no, I think 122, is that the smallest? Then 141. Put them in order from smallest to largest. 153. 155. 157. Oh, I forgot a 149. 149 goes in right here. 162, 165, 165, 177, 189, and 240. So put the data in order. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So n equals 11. So step 2 says count the data and then step 3 says if n is odd. 11 is an odd number. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13 are odd numbers. If 11 is odd, then it's the middle data. It's the middle piece of data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you see there are 5 numbers smaller than 157? And there are 5 numbers larger than 157. 157 is the middle piece of data. That is our median. Median equals 157. Okay? So our median is 157. If n is odd, if there's an odd number of data, put them in order. A lot of people won't put them in order and get the answer wrong. Put them in order, and the middle number is the median. Let's do this on our calculator. Type all of this data. It doesn't matter. You don't have to put it in order. Type all the data into list 1. So put all this data into list 1 and make sure list 2 is clear. So I'm going to put all my data into list 1. Edit. And put it into list 1, and 177, 153, 122, 141, 189, 155, Okay, when I type it in, and now it says list one number 12 is blank, so I have 11 pieces of data in here. I'll give you a second. Type all the data into list one. You don't have to put it in order. All righty, let's take a look at the calculator now. All my data is in the list one. We're going to do the same thing we just did. Stat, arrow over to calculate, one var stats, L1. I don't have anything L2, so I'm going to clear it. If there's nothing in L2 and nothing's supposed to be in L2, it needs to be erased. I hit clear. Go to calculate, and there's the average for the data, but we're trying to find the median, the number in the middle. If you scroll down from here, the middle piece of data is 157. The middle piece of data is 157. That's what we said. 157 was the
I
median.
have this, but I just couldn't do what the last one thing we did. This is bizarre.
Is this working now?
Well, this is the screen that shows up. It just starts off at the median. I'll see you after class.
Okay, that's weird. Okay. So maybe something else is turned on in your calculator or something. But the median is 157. So everybody agree they got that on their calculator? We went to stat, edit, typed in our data. Then we went to stat, arrow over to calculate, one var stats. All our data was in L1. Frequency list should be blank. Calculate, and if you scroll down, it should say median then. It does, if I can not leave. Median is 157. The piece of data in the middle was 157. So we're going to be using this one var stats quite a bit. Okay, so that was for an odd number of data. Let's look at this data here. And if they want us to find the median, the number in the middle, let's put them in order. They could have came up with easier numbers to put in order. 656, 684, 702, 764, 856, 1132, 1133. That's 1130. That's supposed to be 1133. It doesn't look like it. And then 1303. If we count this data 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. N equals 8. Do you see? N is an even number. So I have 3 numbers on this side. I have 3 numbers on this side. There's no number in the middle, even if I put 4 and 4. If N is 8, the steps above say pick the 2 middle numbers. The step above, you see I have 3 on this side and 3 on this side. Pick the 2 middle numbers and take the average of the 2, 764 plus 856 divided by 2. And on my calculator, 764 plus 856. Hit enter and then divide it by 2. And 810 should be my median. My median is an average of the 2 middle numbers. If you have an even number of data points, then your data doesn't have your middle number, so you take the average of the 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in L1 now. I'm going to go put this data into L1 and see if my calculator tells me the answer's 810 also. Stat number 1, and I'm going to clear it. 656, 684, 702, 764, 856. You don't have to, I'm putting them in order, but you don't have to. 1303. Okay, so I put my data in there. I'll give you a second. Once you have your data in there, we're going to do the same steps. Stat, arrow over to calculate. Number 1, var stats. I have something in list 1. List frequency list should be blank. And it tells me my average. Oh, we don't want the average. We want the median. We have to scroll down to the median. And if you notice, the median is 810. So it does all the math for us. The median is 810. Scroll down till you get to the median. 810. That's what we calculated it to be also. So for this particular problem, we don't have to put anything in order. We put everything in L1, then we do stat, calculate, 1 var stats, scroll down till you see median. And our answer for median was 810. It did it for us. It found the average of the 2 middle pieces and did it for us. Any questions on that? So we did average, we did a group data average, we did median for 10, more than 3 pieces, then that's the mode, or whichever data occurs the most often is the mode, sorry. 10 is the mode because that occurs the most often. Okay. The next is right here. Let's see, find the mode. What data occurs the most often? If we look at and they have them in order for us, we have 5 104s. We have 3 109. Oh, wait, we have 5 109s. Oh, I thought they were all in order. We have 5 109s, 107, 1010. These don't occur the most often. But I have 5 104s and 5 109s. So the mode is 104 and 109. You can have 2 modes. If they both occur the same amount, they both occur 5 times, and it's more than everything else, then you have 2 modes, and that occurs the most often. So what number occurs the most often? 104 and 109. You can have 2 modes. I've never seen 3 modes or 4 modes. I think they tell you can have that, but you shouldn't see that in the homework. You definitely won't see it on a test. But you can have 2 modes. If 2 numbers occur the most often, then you have 2 modes. Now, modal class. Remember, mode means occurs the most often. Modal class is which class occurs the most often. Which class has highest frequency? And if we look at this data here, do you see how the frequency, the frequency is the number of times that it fits within this class? 5. That is the modal class. The modal class is 20.5 to 25.5. This class occurs the most often because there are 5 numbers in that frequency, 5 numbers that fall in that class. So we don't care about a number for a mode. We're saying which class occurs the most often, or which class has the most data in it. And there are 5 pieces of data between 20.5 and 25.5. So the modal class is the class that has the highest frequency. Find the mode. And this is kind of like the modal class. Which do you see how Westmoreland, it says boat registrations. Westmoreland has the most boat registrations. So the mode, which one occurs the most often, is Westmoreland. It occurs the most often. It has 11,000 boats registered in Westmoreland. 6 counties in southern Pennsylvania. Westmoreland is the modal class or the mode because it occurs the most often. There are more boats in Westmoreland than any other place. By the way, on here, you can see there's different YouTube videos they do to show mean and using the TI-84. I mean, YouTube's a great spot. You can just go find the median for TI-84 calculator and hit enter, and you could use, and they'll show you how to do that. So, I mean, YouTube's a great source for information. And the videos that I post are a good source. Once again, mid-range, remember I said we're going to have a formula for mid-range. This was another measure of central tendency. By the way, it says list, the things, measures of central tendency: mean, median, mode, and mid-range. Mean, median, and mode, and mid-range. Mid-range is the lowest value that you have in the data plus the highest value divided by 2. So mid-range is just the lowest plus the highest divided by 2. You add the 2 up and divide it by 2. So if I ask, what is the mid-range of this data? Find the smallest piece of data, find the largest piece of data, add them together. 3 plus 157 is 160, and then divide by 2. And the mid-range for this data is 80. Mid-range is the highest piece of data plus the lowest piece of data divided by 2. So that's another one. I'm telling you, you need a formula sheet with all these formulas on it so you can have quick access to them. Every time you come into the workbook and you found a new formula, you should be writing it on a formula sheet or putting a tab in the book saying mid-range is here, so you can have access to it. Because come test time, if you're trying to find all this stuff, you're not going to finish the test. It's hard to get through all this. So you should have a good workbook or something, some page of notes with all these formulas on. You're going to need it for the final. Don't forget, the final, you're only allowed 1 page of notes. Okay, so we're going to find the mean, median, mode, and mid-range of the data set. We're going to find the mean, median, mode, and mid-range of the data set. So we're putting all of this data into list one. Let's put it all into list one, all of it, everything. So we're putting it all into list one. Stat, edit, list one, and start putting them in. 74, 99, 106, 116, 119, 120, 120, 121. So there should be 10 pieces of data you entered in. I put all of that into list one. All right, let's look at the calculator. Entered it all in list one. So stat, calculate one var stats. List one, frequency list should be blank. And our average, our mean is 113.6. For when there's not a mode, you would just say no mode, Megan. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. By the way, I'm gonna talk about that here in a second. When there's no mode, we just say no mode. When no number occurs most often, we just say no mode. Okay, so so the average, once again, the mean is 113.6. I'm going to come. Let's just remember that. The mean is 113.6, and the median is 119.5. I can't remember those numbers. 113.6 and 119.5. Oh no. The median or the mean is 113.6 and what was 119.5? Is that right? Let's see. 119.5, yes, and 113.6. So if you look, we have 10 pieces of data. To find the median, they took the middle two and divided them by 2. Do you see? This and this was the middle two. 119 plus 120. The average of these two is 119.5. Remember, the median is the two middle pieces there. These are all smaller than 119, and these are all larger than the 120. Okay, so we need to find the mid-range. Mid-range was the highest piece of data plus the lowest piece of data divided by 2. 206 divided by 2 is 103. So the mid-range was 103. And the mode, does any number occur more than once? And yes, 120. Mode is 120. There's our answers. 113.6, median is 119.5, mode is 120, mid-range is 103. Now, if I ask this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what is the mode of this? Since no number occurs the most often, we just say no mode. We just say no mode. If you have data and there's no number that occurs most often, we just say no mode. Okay, so here's Trying to do a little bit of everything now. Let's see. We want to find, what are we finding here? What's the question? Find the mean and modal class. Can somebody tell me what the modal class is? What is the modal class here of this problem?
3.5 and 6.5.
Yes, the one with the highest frequency. This is the modal class. 12 is not the modal class, it's the frequency. This is the class, and that is the modal. That is the class that has the highest frequency. So 3.5 to 6.5 is the modal class. Now we have to find the mean. Remember, when we're using group data like this, frequency always goes into L2. In L1, we put the mid-range. The midpoint, sorry, midpoint. Add these two together and divide by 2. Midpoint is the lower boundary plus the upper boundary divided by 2. And when I do that, I get 2. Here I get 5, 8, 11, and 14. Do you see? Once you do 2 of them, it increases by 3. They always increase by the same amount of numbers. So I'm putting 2, 5, 8, 11, 14 in L1, and L2 I'm putting 11, 12, 4, 2, 1. Now they need to be side by side. In other words, the midpoint and the frequency have to be in the same, in the list, right? This is list 1, but this is list 2. They both have to be in the same spot, in the first spot. So let's put that data into our calculator. Stat number 1, I'm clearing list 1. And list 1, I'm putting 2, 5, 8, 11, 14. I'm glad they gave us nice, pretty numbers to type in. Then 11, 12, 4, 2, 1. So once we have all this into our calculator, into list 1 and list 2, just like I have here, standard when you're finding the mean for anything, stat, calculate, 1 var stats. We have a list 2, so you actually, that's okay. Hey, that happens to me also. I erase everything in the list by accident. I hit a delete and I had to restart. Don't forget, if we have something in the list 2, you have to put L2 in there. L2 is second L2. And when I hit calculate, it gives me the average, and the average is 5. The mean is 5. So, sorry. So this was list 2. List 1, we said was 2, 5, 8, 11, and 14. This was the modal class. And our mean is 5. Because that's what we got on the calculator for mean. Did anybody else get 5? Did anybody type it in to get 5?
Yes.
Good, good. Just want to make sure somebody else got it. I've been known to type things in wrong. All right, let's see what else we have. This is hell of a section. I think Wednesday is going to be pretty big too. Weighted mean. So weighted mean is the same thing as we talked about earlier, that group data, when you have the group data finding weighted mean. But this is going to be a test question. So this is definitely a test question, and it's a final exam test question also. So this is on the final, the weighted mean, and this is also in on the test that you're going to take, and it's going to be in the homework. Just know this. The number of credits a class is worth, is the frequency. And where does frequency go? Frequency always goes in the list 2 when you're typing it in. So just above in your workbook or note, just when you're doing GPA, your grade point average, when you're calculating grade point average, credits is your frequency. Credits are going to go into list 2. The grades are going to go into list 1. And we're talking about numerical grades. Numerical grades, A is worth 4 points. This is how we calculate your GPA. The computer calculates your GPA for your being here at school. B's are worth 3 points. C's are worth 2 points. D's are worth 1 point, and F's are 0. So these are the points for a grade in a class. So if somebody got an A in class, A is worth 4 points, we type a 4 into L1, and you get, it's a 3 credit course, so you get 4 points for 3 credits times 3. If you get a C, once again, C is worth 2 points, and it's a 3 credit class. PE is only a 1 point class, or no, sorry, a 2 credit class. But a D, you get a D in physical education, somebody's not been working out. You only get a D is worth 1 point. So let's put this in L1 and let's put this in L2. This is finding our GPA, and you can do the same thing. You know, our class right now, this class is called 1342. This class is called 1342, statistics. How many credits is this class worth? Anybody know? This 3, the second number indicates how many credits the class is worth. This class is worth 3 credits. This class used to be called 1432, where it used to be 4 credits. 1432, it used to be. Now it's called 1342. It's only worth 3 credits. Okay, this class is worth 3 credits. So if you have a class that starts off like 14, 15, like an English class or something like that, that's a 4 credit class. So I'm going to put 4, 2, 3, and 1 in L1. Stat number 1. Let me clear out my list. 4, 2, 3, and 1 in L1. And L2, I'm putting 3, 3, 4, and 2. So I put everything in L1 and L2. And to find my GPA is just the mean. Go to stat, calculate one var stats. I have L1 and L2. I have data in both of those. I'm using both. And my GPA is 2.66. 6666. Since our data is in whole numbers, I can take this to 1 decimal place. And my data, so let's do that, 2.6666666666. Once again, we put this in L2, we put this in L1, and my mean is 2.66. Since the data is all whole numbers, We round it to 2.7. This is my GPA, my grade point average of 2.7. Your grade point average is 2.7.
The credits go on L2 for the frequency.
Say that again?
Oh,
yes.
On L-
I typed it in wrong because they're in the wrong order. You're absolutely right, Elsa. Thank you. L2 and L1. They're backwards. Don't forget, credits is frequency. That's why I wanted you to write it down. Thank you for correcting me. Yes. Frequency is always in L2. Frequency is credits when we do GPA. You will do a GPA on this test and in the homework, and you will do a GPA similar to this on the final exam. But just on a word of caution, they're not going to tell you how many points. They're just going to say A, C, B, D. You have to know an A is worth 4 points, a B is worth 3, a C is worth 2, and a D is worth 1. F's are 0. You have to know that. And on the test, they're not going to tell you how many points an A is, or I'm not sure. Maybe on the first test they will, but the final they won't. So no, A's are worth 4 points, C's are worth 2 points, B's are worth 3 points. Right here. These are the point values for the grades. So the point value might not be there when you take a test. And this is just another one of those. And you can read through the properties of mean. You might get a question on the homework about these. Some of the good things and bad things about them. Okay, so we talked about skewed right and skewed left. I think we talked about them. And I just want to re-emphasize, sometimes they say this, you know, the right, this is the right side of the data, and this is the left side of the graph. Skewed means where's the data least, and so this is right skewed. So this is right skewed data, but we don't always say right skewed. Instead of right skewed, sometimes we say positively skewed. So right skewed and positive skewed mean the same thing. So just put a little note there showing right skewed and positive skewed. They both mean the same thing. Positively skewed or right skewed both mean the same thing. There's less data on the right side. Even when it says positively skewed, it means there's less data on the right side. Symmetric means right down the middle. Do you see? It's the same on the left as the right is the middle. It looks the same on both sides. And then we already, I think there's a left skewed here. Oh, they didn't even want to put a left skewed up there, huh? That's weird. All right, that's it. I think that's it. Oh, no, there's a left skewed here. And once again, skewed left and negative skewed mean the same thing. Skewed left and negative skewed. That means the least amount of data is on the left. So left skewed is the same thing as negative skewed. And with that, we are done.